Let's bring in Dr. Colin Rubenstein, a long-time Executive Director at the Australia, Israel and Jewish Affairs Council. Colin, thanks for your time. Let's start with this uncertainty around whether any Australians have been caught up in the atrocities in Israel or, heaven forbid, held hostage as well. We know that thousands of Australians of Jewish heritage, the Jewish community, have loved ones and know people that have been affected regardless. What's your reaction to this now a few days on?
Look, nobody's untouched by this shocking tragedy, this war. I'm well aware of many family, friends and friends of friends. Look, there's hardly anyone untouched in Israel, and I ventured to say the vast majority of Australian Jewry know somebody who's either been killed, taken hostage, injured. So this has had a massive effect, and the grief and mourning amongst our community is almost unparalleled.
The fact that you had that show of solidarity from the Minns government, from the Australian people, I think the vast bulk would support that initiative to illuminate the Opera House. But then those scenes on the steps of the Opera House with a group that were yelling anti-Semitic chants, I wouldn't say all of those in attendance. We saw the organiser condemn those chants and that group, but there was a group that were doing that. That must have been so shocking for you and for the community, Colin.
Absolutely. I think it's shocking for the broader Australian community to see that. Celebrating this slaughter is completely inconsistent with Australia's norms and democratic values of multicultural Australia. We all have our rights, but we have our responsibilities. And this flagrant behaviour, totally inconsistent with those values, I think has been widely condemned. I must say, I do acknowledge the condemnation of these protesters that we've seen across Australia, bipartisan condemnation, federal and state, by the Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition, by the New South Wales Premier, New South Wales Leader of the Opposition. That's comforting. But the really disappointing thing in this whole affair is the Jewish community was not given the opportunity to come together and pay its respects to those slaughtered by Hamas. And while they complied with the request of the police, and I don't question the sincerity of the police, I do question the judgment here in escorting this group to the Opera House and in not shutting down that protest when we saw such vile, hateful, anti-Semitic insults, burning of flags. This was a celebration of depravity, that this was a flagrant abuse and show of massive disrespect for the Australian Jewish community and more broadly for the Australian community as such.
The Greens backed the rally. In fact, Green Senator Mehreen Faruqi described the illuminating of the National Parliament as a disgrace, quote, one colonial government supporting another. How do you react to that from the Greens?
Oh, that's disgraceful, Blanter. The earth is flat. The Jews are the indigenous people in that area, as she should know. And their stance in all of this is just totally inconsistent with what one expects from political leadership in this country, outside the bounds of what we expect in support of the values of Australian multicultural society, and empirically, factually, totally ignorant and inaccurate.
When you look at the response now from Israel, there's this siege on Gaza, no food, no water, no electricity. It is a diabolical situation, isn't it, Colin, when there are dozens of hostages still within the grip of Hamas. So that ability for the Israeli government to weigh that up, how hard to go in to try and preserve the lives of the hostages, it is a terrible dilemma.
It's a terrible conundrum that they're faced with. And what people need to understand, like the Senator, and what all Australians should understand here, is we're dealing with an organisation, Hamas, which is a prescribed terrorist organisation in Australia. Anyone showing sympathy and support for that organisation has questions to answer. that organisation has demonstrated what's been in its charter and has been its intention all along through its creation since it captured power in 2007, and that is the destruction of Israel and the killing of Jews. They're not interested in a state alongside Israel. They clearly want to destroy Israel. And so anyone showing any sympathy and support for that organisation, needs to have another look at themselves. So we're in a situation now where these events are a watershed. They're a game changer. It's no longer a question of Israel trying to contain Hamas. They have to dislodge them. And you correctly point out there's a terrible conundrum. Hamas is threatening to execute hostages one by one as we speak. And probably they're doing that already. Up to 1,000 people have been killed. This is a shocking state of affairs, but there's consensus in Israel, and I think amongst people who understand the situation, that Hamas has to be dislodged, and their backers in Iran have to be undermined. And this is something, by the way, that the broader Arab world fully understands. And we're talking about actually liberating the poor persecuted Palestinians in Gaza under the thumb of this despotic, tyrannical regime as well. We're looking to liberate them. Yes, unfortunately, there are going to be casualties because the Hamas game plan is to hide behind human shields. We know that. Israel has made every effort over the years to limit civilian casualties. But in this situation now, it's Hamas that is the hiding behind civilian shields, as they always have. And the casualties, which unfortunately, undoubtedly will occur, are fully on their shoulders. It's their responsibility, which I think all objective observers would understand.
We discussed this earlier in the week, but the parallels with 50 years ago and the Yom Kippur War are there with the surprise attack. The thing that shocked me, and I think many observers, was the fact that this military is one of the most advanced in the world. You've got the Iron Dome defence over Israel as well. Just shocking that the intelligence failure here has been so grave, Colin.
No question about that, and those responsible will be called to account in due course. And one has to say that the planning of this operation took considerable assets and skills, and no doubt the Iranians were heavily involved in this. The possibility of neutralising Israeli intelligence, eavesdropping, communication, in the first instance, may be at play here, almost certainly at play in effectively undermining Israeli intelligence, which can help explain the relative tardiness in the response of the security services to this warlike invasion. It was a war. Yes, heads in the long run will roll, but right now Israel is united. It's wounded, but it's united in its determination to put an end to this shocking state of affairs. It's a massive shock on the Israeli psyche. The casualties that are inflicted, you made the comparison with the Yom Kippur War. No doubt those armies got through on the Golan Heights and Sinai. At that time, Israel's existence was definitely on the line. But in terms of the experience of the average Israelis in the hometowns, in the villages across the country, this time around is a true 9/11. In many ways, it's much worse. Everybody knows somebody. The devastation is overwhelming. The depravity of the slaughtering and the butchery that we've seen in place is clear for everyone to understand. There's no future with Hamas on the scene going forward. No future from the Israeli point of view, and there should be no future from the Palestinian and Arab world point of view as well. And the Arab world fully understands the role of Iran in all of this. So watch out as we go forward. It will take a while for all this to come together, for people to understand what's really at stake here. But the stakes are very high, and the need to completely degrade Hamas and their nefarious, brutal agenda is paramount. And there will be costs along the way, but hopefully, even though it's premature to say this, there may be a brighter future for all in the region going forward.
Colin Rubenstein from AJAC, thanks for your time. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks very much, Kieran.